Before I get into it, I want to give a shout out to the commenters coming through again. Mickey Lee and Ella Luna, the two commenters who posted a script. Mickey Lee actually gave me the Instagram post right on it. You could check it in the video recently posted below. Now things are starting to get a little more confusing. But remember what I told you for investigators, when things get messy publicly, it starts to make dire sixth sense. Okay, so from my understanding, TxxTentacion had a very in-depth conversation about how he searched for his mom's attention for a long time in his life. Now she is the sole owner, and what multiple commenters said, TxxTentacion wrote the will right. Now that still doesn't tell me how it was written that all the money he didn't facilitate the activity to earn was given to her instead in his leaving. That still doesn't listen. There was still a product that needed to happen to require the rest of the contract to be fulfilled. If this was not the case, that's not only a problem, but that leads to more questions. Now, I'm finding out they were in Jamaica. So you're in Jamaica with your niece, and she drowns shortly after you photo her dancing on Instagram. How could that be? How could that be? You had her on camera, you photoed her, everything was good, you put her up on social media, then she dies. What's going on? And I know in Jamaica, the investigation is not done the same as here. They're not held to the same standards to investigate situations. This is gonna open up a can of worms, I feel. What's going on, Mom? What's going on? You know, you're in Jamaica, off the coast at some resort, and you film your niece who dies shortly after you film her. Now that is a very interesting concept, because how many other times have we seen things like this dealing with superstar families? Is there going to be a third? That's the question. Is there going to be a third family member we hear about deceased dealing around this situation? It's just starting to get a little sticky for me to understand. So she's dancing, and she was fully clothed dancing. Again, I'll go, and this Instagram I will post. Shout to Mickey Lee, one of my commenters, Ella Luna, who kind of covered up covered the issues that I was kind of asking myself. And to be real, you guys giving me this info is confirming some things I'm thinking in the back of my head, which I'll hold off for now. But what's going on, XxXTentacion's mom? And I haven't seen her name. This video, commenters drop her name, drop her government, so I could do more research into her name. What's actually happening? So your son's the uncle of this young girl. She ends up dead because she drowned. How is that possible if you were there with her? No. How is that possible if she was fully clothed dancing and she died very shortly after? Very shortly after. From other intel that I'm getting. And you know, I don't give all the names because I don't know if everybody, but I always give the commenters because I want to respect them in that way if they're giving me information and bringing it to the channel. What actually occurred? Is this getting investigated thoroughly? How did this niece end up in the pool suffocating underwater if you were there with her? What, you stepped out for a drink or something and this happened? Because first it's your son, and we have a clear setup that I solved from the information given. And the way that works is when people on social media come out solving issues, they'll spin it to something else. Oh, this really happened, and try and make it make sense. I'm ready for that. I understand that. That's fine with me. Yeah. But from the evidence given, I don't see any other alternatives, except if you come up with another alternative that I can see and you mention, then I will double back with the information and make sure it makes sense. So we're going to make sense out of this thing. So TxxTentacion's niece ends up deceased. And how was this will written? How did this will get written to acquire all royalties from this record company in order for them to maintain $1 million houses and her to gain substantially after her son's gone? Why is it that this mother has gained so substantially to take trips to Jamaica, blasting music with her niece dancing that dies? This is very questionable. This is because, as we know, the many scenarios that involve people that were out in the limelight and then another person took over what they had, whether it's a record company or not, they succeeded overseedingly. And I mean, when I'm looking at it that way, this brings up a question of what type of time were they on? How'd you let this happen? And why is it that you had to go to a foreign country and this happens to her? You weren't at a pool here in the U.S. because you know how law works here. Everything's thoroughly investigated by a process, step by step. How do you end up in Jamaica and this niece ends up deceased? I would like the report. If anybody could find me the report from Jamaica on this, or did they do an investigation? Was it just a niece is deceased and now we're going back home? What's going on? I need to see some information. See, the public is no longer going to just accept what you say happened. You need to show us, especially after your son, a prominent artist, is gone. And now, allegedly, he wrote a will that allowed you to be in such power that it's like you earned everything your son had. You earned everything your son had, which, respectively, as the mother, you should have had a piece. But when I'm watching this interview and I rewatch it again, he's not speaking as if you were even in his life. It was as if he was raised by alternative family, then the system. It wasn't even that he said, you know, my mother raised me from when I was young. He said there was conflict and he actually got kicked out of his house. I don't know if it was by the mother or what, but now you're rich, like you're Tentacion, and the niece dies. What's going on? You have so much money, you didn't have the money to have someone sit there and watch your niece as she swims, since she's not skilled at swimming. She just ends up dead. Is that how it works? I'm not truly understanding how this story's playing out. But at the same time, it's starting to play out a different perspective that I'm really not trying to take. I'm not trying to take this twist on the story. I really don't want to think what I'm starting to think is going on, because you just lost your son. Then a few weeks later, you lose your niece in Jamaica on a trip. Is that how it worked? Is anyone else getting a picture that I'm trying to see that isn't making sense? So this setup, if it allegedly happened with an uncle or cousin, or let's say a party who has yet to speak, since we want to be respectable, since there's so many different perspectives coming out covering up the issue, what was the nature of the relationship with authority to not investigate who was in the car with him? How did they get out of answering for this? Because it looks like a lot of people are getting out of answering for situations that they shouldn't be. And if this was a normal person, like a normal citizen like me, there would be a full investigation. How come she's getting away with saying, oh, my niece died, this person died, and there's no thorough investigation on her because she's rich? How does she avoid that? Oh, so I'm held to a certain standard. She's not, because she's well off. And this isn't even normal daily rich. You inherited everything your son worked for. How does that work? I'm not really getting this. This is an understanding. Someone needs to explain this to me. How do you write a will to gain benefits off of monetary gain that you can't even put up the skill to acquire the worth? Even if we look at how his sales soared after he passed, that would not work up to the amount of money that's worth the situation. You get what I'm saying? It's really not making sense. I don't know who that was. Keep it moving. That doesn't work up to the situation. That doesn't make any type of sense. I need to understand what's going on. I need to get what's happening. That doesn't make any sense to me. So my commenters, once again, if you could find me a report of her niece being deceased in Jamaica, some type of investigation that happened, because it had to get investigated if she died. If you're saying she died there needs to be some type of documentation. If we do not find documentation on her obituary or what exactly happened, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what perspective is going to unleash, but I am going to speak on it if there's no paperwork. That's going to be the next thing I talk about. If there's no paperwork to it, that's going to be the next thing I'm going to speak about. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense on how things are occurring. I need to understand this point of view. I need to get it, because I get what you guys are saying, and all you're saying makes sense, but I'm not understanding the view and perspective that's being put into place so that I can get what actually happened. You know what I'm saying? It's no type of detail behind what I'm being told. And there's no way to write a will to gain. In respect to Ella Luna and other commenters that mention a will, there's no type of will I could write that'll make a record company hand over the money when the obligation was not completed. It doesn't matter if you're deceased. You can't write a will that way, because what didn't happen didn't happen. That's not how documentation is completed. And again, if you doubt me, we could do a video walking through wills and documentation on how that's not possible. We've seen many artists, like I said, die, and then their sales soar, and yeah, she could be using that money, but you can't tell me he signed a $10 million deal shortly before he dies. He spends like almost, let's say he spent $5 million of it. That other $5 million still needs to be accounted for. There's no way around that. It's all about the legal system. It's all about the legality of what's occurring. There's many different viewpoints that we need to get. The perspectives aren't complete. And if my inkling's right, I think this picture is going to build itself once we put together the issue of her dying in Jamaica, and we're able to take this paperwork and put it together with the issues going on here with a case yet solved. Where are these suspects? All rights reserved.